So I'm happy to introduce Dr. Michael Greger on the show, I guess, today. And Dr. Greger is author, founder of nutritionfacts.org, which is a fantastic resource for anybody interested in health, interested in nutrition, interested in becoming a more vibrant person. And so it's happy to introduce Dr. Greger.
I'm happy to be here.
So I guess Dr. Greger, first off, just let us know a little bit about yourself, what you do, and yeah.
Sure. So I run a website, nutritionfacts.org. It provides kind of everything on the website's free. There's no ads, no corporate sponsorship, strictly non-commercial. Just put it up as a public service. New videos and articles every day on the latest nutritional science. So evidence-based nutrition, what a concept. Been doing it for a couple of years. Now up to about 1 million hits a month. Very excited that people are kind of digging my work and happy to help out.
Awesome. So I guess we'll just get right into the questions. So the first question I have is, there's more and more, as the years go by, more and more evidence is coming out to say that plant-based nutrition is the healthiest form of nutrition for the human body. But there's also what they call science on the other side that says that meat and animal products, dairy products, butter, these things are good for you in moderation. And specifically, I'm talking about the science behind the paleo diet. So I'm wondering if you could talk about that, and because there's a lot of problems with, they're saying, yeah, but there's evidence on that side and there's evidence on this side. I don't know what to believe. So
Right.
normal people don't know what to believe. So
Yeah, and that's actually why I created the website. I mean, it's because there's so many conflicting opinions, and unfortunately, there was so little kind of translation of this mountain of science we have into the public discourse. I remember when I wrote my book on Atkins. I mean, 4 million Americans were following this crazy diet, living off bacon and butter, and it was a cardiologist, an MD, who was telling people to eat like this. But missing from the back and forth was, wait a second, we have a century of science to answer this question. We don't need to, it's not a matter of, Dr. Greger versus Dr. Atkins versus Dr. Ornish. It's the science versus nonsense. I mean, that's just, and so that's why, everything I show the sources from the primary scientific literature, show the quotes, have links to all the articles that I cite, so you can read for yourself. I mean, you can see, kind of get a sense of what the best available information is out there. The paleo folks have, just like Atkins did, have a good point when it comes to refined carbs. Table sugar and white flour aren't good for you. Paleo folks are on board with that. Both camps don't advise dairy, which of course makes sense from an evolutionary standpoint, as just well as kind of a common sense standpoint. But in the Paleolithic period, it was all about getting calories. Calories are the most important thing. I mean, we lived in a calorie scarce environment. And any source of calories was, got us to reproductive age to pass on our genes. We live in a very different period now. Now it's not about, scrabbling together whatever we can to get to age 20 before we die, and we have some kids before we die. Now it's about, maximizing longevity. Actually, what can we do? And now, the leading killers aren't saber-toothed tigers. Now the leading killers are chronic diseases like heart disease and cancer and stroke. And so, if that's what's wiping out, if you look at the top 15 killers, right? The vast majority are diet related, and so and related to the standard American diet. So now, what we need to, so that really has to be the focus. Okay, and so what do we know about chronic disease and diet? Well, we know that there are populations, like in rural Africa, rural Asia, that are free of these diseases. And so that combined with migration studies showing that when people from Japan, for example, move to Hawaii, they have the same Japanese genes they were born with, but now adopt a westernized diet, then their disease rates approach that of the standard Western world. So we know it's not genes, and so we know it's it's diet and lifestyle, particularly diet. Now we have studies where we actually put people on these very similar diets, these traditional plant-based diets followed in sub-Saharan Africa, followed in rural China. And we did that in hopes of stopping the progression of some of these chronic diseases. So these are areas that have essentially no heart disease, for example. So it's not an inevitable consequence of aging. So number one killer here, practically non-existent there. Well, why don't we take people with severe triple vessel heart disease, put them on those kind of diets in hope of just stopping it, stopping the progression of the disease, but instead something miraculous happened. And what happened is the disease actually got better. So when placed on these plant-based diets, the disease actually reversed. Arteries opened without drugs, without surgery in some cases. That's really dramatic. That really shows that, boy, the body's been wanting to be healthy all these years, and all we had to do is just stop eating this artery clogging diet, and our arteries will naturally go back, be able to dissolve some of that plaque away. And so when anyone comes to me saying, what about the paleo diet, or what about the Martian diet, or what about the X diet, I have one simple question. And the simple question is, does your diet reverse heart disease in the majority of patients? The number one reason you and all your loved ones will die. Does it reverse heart disease? If the answer is no, why would you even consider it, right? And if that's all a plant-based diet did, reverse our number one killer, shouldn't that be the default diet until proven otherwise? And then the fact that it also can be effective in treating or reversing other top killers like type 2 diabetes and hypertension would seem to make the case overwhelming for plant-based eating.
So would you say that our natural diet is a vegan diet or plant-based diet?
Our natural diet is whatever the heck we could find. We have this tremendous, we're kind of like scavengers. So for example, carnivores, need meat or they die. So we're not carnivores, obviously. Herbivores need plants or they die. We're not even herbivores because you could be an Eskimo and have almost no plant matter and still live. You can get vitamin C from raw blubber. We're really, I think, biologically more like scavengers, like rats. And even omnivore, we're not really omnivores. Omnivores, like bears, they actually need both. They need plant matter and animal matter to survive. But like scavengers like rats, cockroaches, can live off basically anything. We have this tremendous biological ability to live almost anywhere. And that's enabled us to be very kind of evolutionarily very, successful and been able to spread to all parts of the world. But the question is not what we can live off of, but what type of diet maximizes health and longevity, decreases disability, decreases common diseases, decreases killer diseases. And that, the balance of evidence overwhelmingly points to a whole food plant-based diet.
Okay. So moving on, let me see. So one question I get a lot is, but eating that many calories from plant foods, eating, let's say, a high carbohydrate-based, plant-based diet, that would make me fat. Because I'm not an athlete, and I wouldn't use that many calories. I can't eat that many potatoes, is what I get.
That's exactly right. You can't eat that much. So plant foods are calorically dilute. So, for example, if you look at 100 calories of broccoli versus 100 calories of meat, 100 calories of cheese, 100 calories of jelly beans, right? On one side, the processed junk animal products, it's less than a little palmful. Like you wouldn't be full at all. A tablespoon of oil, is that going to fill you up, right? But 100 calories of strawberries, 100 calories of broccoli. Right? You're going to get full. And look, you've got 2,000 calories to deal, approximately throughout the day. And so you can just stuff your face all day long with whole plant foods and be as full as you want to be, just the volume, because it has fiber, has water, both of which add bulk, but without any calories. And so you get all this nutrition with very few calories. And so, if there was going to be any problem, it would be people lose too much weight. Now, for most Americans, that's not a problem. Most Americans, getting too few calories is not a problem. But if you're skinny, particularly if you're a skinny athlete, and you all of a sudden go on a plant-based diet, you have to eat a lot of food. Like, no longer can you just eat the same kind of volume of food. You look down your plate, like, okay, this is what lunch means, this much food. And if all of a sudden you replace this much food from Arby's and all of a sudden actually eating real food, then you have to eat much more. You have to eat more frequently. You may have to eat like smoothies and nut butters and dried fruits, really calorically kind of dense sources of calories. Otherwise, you're just not going to be able to fuel yourself. And so it's actually the opposite problem. But plant-based diets are perfect for the vast majority of the population to bring down their weight. The average American is overweight, nearly obese, at BMI of 28.8. The only dietary group on average that's not overweight, in fact, ideal weight, not the vegetarians, they're still overweight on average, is the vegans. It's people eating strictly plant-based diets. But for those who are really active, particularly endurance athletes, they have to eat a lot or they're not going to thrive on a plant-based diet.
Okay. So, changing gears a little bit. So, from your website, from the research, from the science, years and years of research, says that it's not good for humans physically. But there are a lot of people that say that meat and dairy isn't good for the planet in terms of global warming. Is it aggravating global warming is the question. I just wanted to know your thoughts on that.
Certainly not my area of expertise, but there's a variety of reports from the United Nations to some advisors of the World Bank that suggest that, for example, greenhouse gas emissions, livestock, between maybe 18 to 51% of all anthropogenic, meaning human-induced greenhouse gas emissions. And a lot of that is methane, which is much more heat-trapping than carbon dioxide, and is actually much quicker to get rid of out of the environment. Even if we reduce carbon dioxide emissions, all the carbon dioxide is going to be sitting there for a long time, continuing to warm the earth. Whereas methane, we can actually pull out of the environment much quicker and hopefully drop the kind of greenhouse gas, the heat-trapping ability of the current greenhouse gas emissions. I think that's really an area in which we could do a lot in terms of reducing climate change implications, but it would require, kind of dramatic changes in our diet. But these are the same kind of changes that would be beneficial for human health. So it'll save us money, save lives, and save greenhouse gases, uses less land, etc. There's lots of good information out there. There's a new documentary coming out called Cowspiracy, which is talking about just that. Like, why don't more environmental organizations really talk about this issue of livestock production? Similarly, why don't more healthcare organizations talk about plant-based diets in terms of, reducing some of our chronic disease risks?
It's the metaphorical elephant in the room that nobody wants to talk about.
Right. Well, more and more. It's slowly but surely we're getting there.
Yeah.
Kaiser Permanente, the largest managed care organization in the country, recently released a nutritional update for physicians, telling all their 15,000 physicians that, to recommend a plant-based diet for all their patients. And the reason is, follow the money. Look, they're a health insurance company. They want to save money. How do you save money? You keep people from getting diabetes. You keep people from getting their legs amputated and going on dialysis. There's actually, money to be lost for the food industry, but there's money to be gained for the health insurance industry and money to be gained for our society, who's now, particularly in this country, just bleeding healthcare dollars.
Yeah. So would you say that, just like if you have a pet, if you have a dog or a cat, and you feed it until it's completely overweight, or you malnourish it and it's really really skinny, that person's going to jail, and that dog is getting taken away from that owner. Would you say that there's a double standard then for people who feed their kids these nutrient deficient diets, and and have these kids, and they create health problems that the kids will have into adulthood? Do you think they should be considered child abuse?
So in the last decade, there's been a 100% increase in the rates of childhood diabetes. Why? Because there's been such a dramatic increase in childhood obesity. In fact, they even changed the name. It used to be called adult onset diabetes. They no longer call it that. Now they call it type 2 because it's striking the youth. And that really sets up kids for, diabetes, number one cause of amputations, kidney failure, blindness, adult onset blindness, etc. So, on average, childhood diabetes wipes out 19.9 years off of a child's life. So about 20 years, all right? And, it just left me thinking, who among us wouldn't go to the ends of the earth to add 20 years to our child's life, right? I mean, what would we not do, yet, where we pull into, Mickey D's or something. I mean, it's just like, people just don't understand the implications. And in fact, even kids who are obese, who then lose weight and have skinny adults, actually, it turns out they still suffer high rates of heart disease and diabetes later in life because of that childhood obesity, which seems to kind of somehow reprogram the body. So, childhood obesity is a significant problem, leading to, just devastation from a healthcare standpoint, tremendous suffering, and but at this point, it's not. I think it's just people don't know. I mean, people don't know how powerful, the fork can be, and they don't have good ways to. You tell people go on plant-based diet, they're like, "What do you mean? Like eating sprouts and salad?" Like, they have no concept. But now it's getting easier and easier. There's tremendous resources out there. There's PCRM's 21-day Kickstart program, which offers recipes and advice. And there's just now it's much easier to do it. And so it's just a matter of getting this information out there and sharing it with people so they can save the lives of themselves and their families.
And I think it's also a lot of people just say, well, what about your protein? What about B12? What about iron? What about your omega-3s?
If only there was a really good nutrition website that could just really,
Yeah. So I guess I got two more questions real quick. A lot of people have become interested in what's called the 80-10-10 diet, or fruitarianism, which I don't know if you're familiar with. Okay. So I just wanted your opinion on that.
Yeah, no, it would be very difficult to thrive long term. And so there's been a number of studies done on like the Hallelujah diet participants who live very kind of a high raw lifestyle. And they're really disappointing long term, both nutrient intake and long term kind of chronic disease risk. There's a great book by Brenda Davis called Becoming Raw. It talks about some of the difficulties. Look, you can sprout, grains and legumes, and there's ways you can do it 100% raw, and eat these kind of really high fruit diets. But the more and more restrictive one diet gets, the more difficult it is to kind of more thought one has to put in to make sure they're getting everything. And it's like, why would you do? I mean, we already have. So we don't have big populations that follow that kind of diet, right? I mean, what we like to do. So we have data from Uganda and Kenya, where we have populations of 15 million people, and they have almost no appendicitis and no rheumatoid arthritis and no diverticulitis and no multiple sclerosis and no heart disease and no type 2 diabetes, and obesity. Millions of people, really good. We have this network of missionary hospitals set up by Western doctors who did these, case series of thousands of autopsies and be able to document these. So we have this tremendous body of science saying this kind of diet can prevent, arrest, reverse chronic disease. And so, let's do that diet because that's the best available balance of evidence we have. And then look, for experimental purposes, let's see if we can tweak it. Let's see if we can make it better. So then it would be great. All right, let's do some science. Let's put people on 80-10-10, something else, see how they do short-term in terms of risk factors, long-term in terms of disease rates. We don't have that data. And so until we do, let's stick with what we know and then kind of work from there. That's just kind of my thought about it. And if we had, but in the future, we may have different science, and when we do, we'll, change the recommendations.
So as an MD, if somebody came into your office and said, I want to become a fruitarian, or I want to eat mostly fruits, some vegetables like romaine lettuce and that kind of stuff, celery. Well, what would you say to that?
I would say I'd like them to eat nuts. I'd like them to eat sprouted legumes. I'd like them to see. I want to make sure that they're, getting the full complement of essential nutrients. It's, they need to be taking their B12. They need to, you go down the list. And look, if they really want to work at it and they're like all excited about doing it, I'd be happy to work with them to find a way to make it work for them. But, I'd also ask, why? What do you hope to gain? Do you just really love bananas? Or is it because adding lentils, adding cooked lentils, come on. Adding steamed broccoli.
Well, there's some people that would argue that rice and steamed broccoli is toxic to the human body.
Okay, well, I'd love to see that data. I want toxic broccoli data. Send it my way. My contact information is on the website, nutritionfacts.org. Look, maybe I just happened to miss the toxic rice and broccoli,
Yeah.
So send me the lentils are bad for you data, and we'll compare it to my lentils are good for you data, and make up your own mind. But,
Yeah.
You don't have a preconceived notion and then go out and look in the science to back up your opinion.
Right.
You go into the science, you find out what's there, and then you change your diet to reflect the science, not the other way around.
Right. That's anti-dogma.
That's what?
Anti-dogma thinking.
Right.
So I guess my final question, to wrap it up, would be, there's some critics of yours. Obviously there's going to be critics because in your line of work and other physicians' line of work that, you're essentially at the vanguard of, pushing, an anti, pharmaceuticals are the answer, and, basically a nutrition-based, let food be thy medicine approach. But people say that you're trying to nitpick and cherry pick data to fit your vegan agenda, and that you've basically swallowed veganism hook, line, and sinker. I just want your opinion on that.
Well, I think if you look at the website, I am giving a mirroring, a representation of what's available in the scientific literature. I've got lots of videos, probably over a dozen videos saying vegans need to take their B12 because they're doing it wrong. They're not taking vitamin B12 supplements or fortified foods. I'm trying to make people healthy, and this is the data. This is the best data we have of how to be healthy. It's like when the tobacco industry would attack, non-smoking, public health people and say, well, they're non-smokers. Well, they wrote this article against smoking, so they're biased. Well, they're doctors. Of course they're biased. They want patients to be healthy, right? They want the public health people yes, they're biased. They're biased for public health. They wouldn't go into public health if they were like Lex Luthor and anti-public health, right?
Yeah.
And so now you want to make sure that your anti-smoking bias doesn't make you, over exaggerate the effects of secondhand smoking, or and so I think there's a legitimate concern there. It's what's called white hat bias.
Okay.
You're trying to do the right thing, and so you don't want to say that, well, for ulcerative colitis, smoking may actually make it better. For schizophrenia, the nicotine in cigarette smoke may actually improve some aspects of schizophrenia. And so, you in your white hat bias might just not mention that and just want to say, look, smoking's bad, smoking bad, period. And so some vegan advocates are maybe like, oh my God, I know this is the right way to eat. I know this is going to save millions of lives. So, don't worry about your B12. Don't worry about, you'll do fine. Just eat your vegan donuts and you don't have to worry about anything. And that's not,
Right.
And I understand where they're coming from because they want people to be healthy, but you just got to lay it out there. Here's the science. Do you think I got the science wrong? Let me know. I mean, there's a whole discussion, board after every single of my videos, and someone will say, what about this? What about this study? I'm surprised you didn't mention this. And I'd be like, oh, here, let me show you how this fits into that. I have a video about that study. That study was so important, I made an entire new video just for that.
Yeah.
Or I'll redo the video. If I make a mistake, I've done that all the time. I made lots of mistakes. And I just instantly, I re-record the video and it goes back up and I thank the person. I send them free DVDs. Whatever. It's all about getting the science right to best feed ourselves and our family.
Well, I want to thank you for taking the time to do this. And you mentioned nutritionfacts.org. I'll be happy to put a link down below.
Great.
And thank you, Dr. Bear.
Absolutely. Thank you. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.